The canyon was a slash of green secret in the tawny, sun-bleached skin of the Arizona Territory. Elias Holt followed the map his dying partner, Charlie, had scratched in, a piece of leather, his mouth dry as the dust his horse kicked up. "The Spanish gold ain't in a mine," Charlie had coughed, his lungs ruined by desert grit and regret. "It's in the waterfall. Look for the stone that weeps." Now, a week into his solitary search, Elias found it, a ribbon of white water, cascading 30 feet down a mossy cliff face into a clear jade-green pool. The air was cool and thick with mist, a sanctuary in the oven blast of the desert. He dismounted, letting his mare, Bess, drink from the stream that fed the pool. The roar of the falls was a constant, soothing thunder. He was about to scout the cliff for Charlie's weeping stone, when a flicker of movement in the pool caught his eye. A human form, dark against the bright water. He froze, his hand drifting to the Colt on his hip. It was a woman. She was bathing under the cascade where it hit the pool, her back to him, her long black hair a slick curtain against her skin. She moved with an unself-conscious grace, scrubbing her arms, ducking her head under the pounding water. She was Apache, he was sure of it. A trespasser in this hidden place, just as he was. A dangerous one. Every nerve in his body told him to mount up and ride, to avoid the complication and the peril. But he was transfixed, not by lust, but by the sheer, startling normality of the scene, a person finding solace in cool water on a scorching day. He took a single, involuntary step forward, and a loose stone clattered under his boot. Her head whipped around. Even from 40 feet away, through the mist, he saw her eyes lock onto his. She didn't scream. She didn't cover herself. She simply sank lower into the water, up to her chin, her gaze burning into him with an intensity that felt physical. Elias stood rooted, caught. He raised his hands slowly, palms out, to show he meant no immediate harm. For a long moment, they remained in that silent hello, the waterfall roaring between them. Then she moved. With a powerful, fluid stroke, she swam not away from him but sideways, towards the waterfall itself. She disappeared behind the curtain of water. Elias blinked. Had she found a cave? Charlie's words echoed, "Look for the stone that weeps." He was still deciding whether to approach or flee when her voice came, strangely clear despite the waterfall's din. It was a low, urgent whisper that seemed to ride on the mist itself, meant only for him. "Cowboy." He started looking around, but there was only the cliff, the pool, the falls. "Do not look." The voice again, a hissed command from behind the watery veil. "My dress, it is gone." The words were so incongruous, so humanly flustered amidst the wild setting, that Elias's sense of danger was momentarily short-circuited. "Gone?" he called back, his voice too loud, too rough. "Taken, while I washed, by a man, not you, another." Her voice was tight, not with modesty, but with a cold, controlled fury. "He watches from the rocks above. He has my clothes. And my knife." Ice flooded Elias's veins. The intimate vulnerability of the moment vanished, replaced by a predatory reality. She wasn't hiding from him. She was trapped, naked, unarmed, pinned behind a waterfall, by someone who had stolen the very means of her dignity and defense. The man in the rocks had the advantage, and he was likely waiting for the cowboy to leave, or perhaps to be drawn into the open himself. Elias didn't turn his head to search the high rocks. He kept his gaze fixed on the general area of the waterfall, his mind racing. He was a decent tracker, a fair shot, but he was no Indian fighter. This was a fight he hadn't asked for, born from a gold hunt and a stolen dress. "What do you want me to do?" he asked, the words leaving his mouth before he could reconsider. He was already involved. He had seen her, and the watcher in the rocks had seen him see her. The answer came back swift and sure. "Your blanket. From your saddle. Throw it to the pool's edge. Then turn your back. Keep your hand on your gun and look at the canyon entrance." It was a plan, a set of orders. She was thinking tactically even in this state. Elias felt a grudging respect cut through his fear. He gave a single, sharp nod. Moving slowly, he went to Bess, who was cropping grass, oblivious. He untied the gray wool bedroll from behind his saddle. He walked to the edge of the pool, his boots sinking in the soft mud, and tossed the blanket so it landed on a dry, flat rock just where the waterfall spray ended. Then, as instructed, he turned his back. He faced the winding canyon mouth, a quarter-mile away. His right hand rested on the worn walnut grip of his Colt. The skin between his shoulder blades prickled. He was utterly exposed, trusting a woman he'd never met to not brain him with a rock, trusting that the unseen man in the cliffs wouldn't put a bullet in his back. The roar of the waterfall was now a maddening curtain of sound, hiding all other noise. He could see nothing behind him, only the empty canyon ahead. The wait was an agony. Seconds stretched into an eternity. Every rustle of cottonwood leaves, every distant bird call, felt like the cocking of a hammer. Elias focused on his breathing, on the solid feel of the gun under his palm. He thought of Charlie dying for a gold fever that had now led him into a blind, stupid standoff over a stolen dress. He thought of the woman's voice, furious, humiliated, but clear and direct. She hadn't pleaded. She had commanded. A soft, wet sound behind him, the barest change in the pattern of the waterfall's noise. Then a whisper, closer now, from just over his shoulder. "I am covered. You may turn." He turned slowly. She stood there, wrapped in his gray blanket, which she had somehow secured around herself like a crude toga. Water beaded on her shoulders and dripped from the ends of her hair. She was younger than he'd guessed, perhaps in her mid-20s. With a fierce, elegant face and eyes that missed nothing. She held herself with a regal stillness, but her gaze was scanning the high cliff faces, the boulder field, with the precision of a hawk. "Thank you," she said, the words formal, acknowledging a debt, but offering no warmth. "Who is he?" Elias asked, his own eyes now searching the rock she had indicated. "A white man, one of 3. They call him Shale. He is a collector of things that are not his." Her lip curled. "They have been following my people's band for days, taking little things. A pot, a bridle. Now they take this." She gestured at the blanket, a substitute for her stolen dress. The violation was clear in her clenched jaw. 3 of them? Elias's stomach sank. "And they're up there too, are Shale and another. The third circles like a coyote. They thought I was alone." She finally looked directly at him, assessing him as a factor in her survival equation. "You are looking for the gold." It wasn't a question. Elias flushed, caught. "My partner, he left a map." A faint, derisive snort. "The Spanish lie. The stone that weeps is not for gold. It is for hiding. There is a cave. It is where I left my son." The world tilted again. "Your son?" "A child of 5 summers. He is asleep in the dark, behind the water. I told him not to come out, no matter what he heard." Her voice wavered for the first time. "A crack in the stone. They do not know he is there. If they find him, they will take him too. A curiosity for their collection." The stakes had just exploded. This wasn't about a dress, or even about Elias's skin. It was about a child hiding in a cave, and a mother standing between him and men who saw people as trinkets. The abstract danger of an Apache woman crystallized into the very specific, righteous danger posed by the men in the rocks. "What's your plan?" he asked, his voice low. "You have a horse. I need a distraction. A loud one. At the canyon mouth. You ride out as if you are spooked, as if you saw something terrible. Fire your gun once at the sky. They will look, all of them." For a moment her eyes were hard. "In that moment I will get my son from the cave. We will go into the canyon depths, where the horse cannot go." "And then they'll come after me?" Elias stated. "They may. You are a witness, and you have a horse, which they will want. But you are a man with a gun on open ground. It is a better fight than mine, unarmed, with a child." There was no apology in her logic, only brutal truth. He waited. Riding into the open as a target was madness. But staying here was a slow siege that would end with him found. And he saw the unyielding fire in her eyes. She would do this with or without him. With him, the child had a chance. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. She hesitated. "Layla." It meant night in the tongue of her mother's people, she explained quietly. "Elias," he tipped his hat. "All right, Layla, I'll be your distraction. But when you run, you take Bess." He pointed to his mare. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Your horse? The boy can't run fast enough. And you'll never outpace them on foot, not carrying him. Take her. There's a draw about 2 miles east. Looks like a dry riverbed. I'll meet you there at sundown, if I can." He was committing to this now, fully. The gold was forgotten. She studied him, searching for the trick. Finding none, she gave another sharp nod. The draw. At sundown. She extended a hand from the blanket, not for a handshake, but to receive the reins he would soon toss. "Do not die, Elias. I do not wish to owe your ghost a horse." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Do my best. Get ready." He turned and walked briskly to Bess, whispering to the calm mare as he untied her. He led her to Layla, pressing the reins into her still damp hand. Their fingers brushed for an instant. "On my shot," he said, and then he turned and began to run, not towards the canyon mouth, but along the cliff base, away from the waterfall, putting distance between himself and Layla before making his play. His heart hammered against his ribs. This was it. Elias ran for 50 yards, then ducked behind a large juniper, its trunk wide enough to hide him from the cliffs above. He drew his Colt, checked the cylinder, and took a deep, shuddering breath. He was about to announce his location to at least 2 armed men of dubious character. "Charlie, you fool," he thought. "This is where your map led." He burst from behind the tree, sprinting now in a zigzag toward the open canyon mouth, exaggerating his movements, making himself a perfect panic target. "Yah! Yah!" he yelled, waving his free arm. He reached the edge of the tree line, where the canyon opened into the wider desert. He stopped, turned dramatically back the way he'd come, raised his Colt and fired a single, sharp report into the empty blue sky. The sound echoed off the canyon walls, a violent crack that shattered the afternoon. He didn't wait to see if it worked. He dove for the scant cover of a greasewood shrub, scanning the high rocks. For 3 heartbeats, nothing, then movement. A man in a battered brown hat stood up from behind a boulder high on the left cliff, staring down at the canyon mouth. Another, a big man with a red beard shale, presumably appeared further right, his attention also grabbed by the shot and the spectacle. Elias's breath caught. "Look at me, you bastards, just for a minute." His eyes flicked back to the waterfall. A gray-blanketed figure emerged, not cautiously, but at a low, swift run. Layla moved, like flowing water, straight to the base of the falls. She vanished behind the curtain. Seconds later, she reappeared, and now she carried a small, blanket-wrapped bundle in her arms, her son. She didn't look toward the cliffs or Elias. She ran to where Bess stood, calmly waiting. In one fluid motion she was on the mare's back, the child secured before her. She wheeled the horse, not toward the canyon mouth, but deeper into the green, narrow gorge from which the stream originated, a path Elias hadn't even seen. The man on the left, brown hat, saw her. He shouted, pointing. Shale turned, his roar of fury audible even over the distance, and the waterfall's residual hum. He raised a rifle. Elias didn't think. He stood up from his poor cover, aimed not to kill but to disrupt, and fired 2 quick shots at the cliff face near Shale. Chips of rock exploded. Shale ducked, his shot going wild. By the time he and Brown Hat returned their attention to the waterfall cleft, Layla and Bess were gone, swallowed by the green maw of the upper canyon. Now 2 very angry pairs of eyes focused on Elias. He was the only target left. "Well, hell," he muttered. He turned and ran, not into the open desert, but back along the canyon wall. using the same scrub and rock for cover he'd used before. A bullet whined off a stone to his left. Another kicked up dirt at his heels. They were shooting downhill. At a moving target in poor light, the odds were barely in his favor. He reached a narrow side arroyo, little more than a crack in the earth, and threw himself into it. He scrambled on hands and knees, then ran, bent double, following the winding cut. The shots stopped. They'd lost sight of him. He ran until his lungs burned, then slowed to a fast walk. He had no horse, little water, and 2 killers somewhere behind him. But Layla and the boy had gotten clear. That was the objective. He checked the sun. Hours until sundown. Miles to the dry draw. The afternoon was a grueling game of hide and seek. He heard distant shouts. One saw Redbeard shale on a ridge line, but he kept to the low, broken ground. He was thirsty, tired, and his boots were wearing thin, but a strange energy kept him moving. He'd made a promise. The sun was a bleeding orange wound on the horizon when he found the draw. It was deep and shadowed, just as he'd remembered from his scout days earlier. He approached with caution, his Colt drawn. A soft wicker greeted him. Bess stood tethered in the shadows, contentedly chewing on some dry grass. Beside her, Layla stood. She was no longer wrapped in his blanket. She wore a simple, clean dress of faded blue calico. She must have had a spare hidden in the cave. Her son, a serious-eyed little boy, peeked out from behind her legs. She saw his worn-out state, the dust, the relief on his face. She didn't smile, but the fierce tension in her own frame eased. "You are not a ghost." "Not yet," Elias panted, holstering his gun. He nodded to the boy. "He all right?" "He is brave, like his mother," the boy said in clear, proud English, making Layla's lips quirk, almost into a smile. "They will not follow into our lands," Layla said, gesturing east into the deepening twilight. "Their courage is small. It requires stolen dresses and hidden rifles." Elias nodded, leaning against the draw's wall to catch his breath. "Your dress, I'm sorry that happened." She looked at him, the last of the sunset light catching in her dark eyes. "You gave me a blanket, and a horse, and a distraction. You looked at the canyon when I asked. You did not look when I told you not to." She said this, as if listing the qualities of a rare and reliable weapon. The dress was cloth. These things were honor. She walked to Bess and untied the blanket from behind the saddle. She shook it out and handed it back to him. Then, from a small pouch at her waist, she took something else. A smooth, water-worn stone, dark and shot through with a single, jagged vein of quartz that sparkled in the twilight like a tear. "The stone that weeps," she said, placing it in his calloused palm. "It is not Spanish gold. It is older. It is for safe passage, for remembering that not all secrets are for taking. Some are for keeping." Elias closed his fingers around the cool stone. The weight of it felt right. The map had led him to gold, after all, just not the kind Charlie had meant. "I will remember," he said. She lifted her son onto Bess's back, then swung up behind him. She looked down at Elias, the cowboy who hadn't looked. "The draw leads to a spring. Rest. Tomorrow, follow the sun to the White Mesa. Your horse will find you there." Then, with a click of her tongue, she turned Bess and rode east, into the gathering night. Elias stood holding the weeping stone, watching them disappear. Roar of the waterfall replaced by a profound, peaceful silence. He had gone looking for a treasure, and found a different kind of wealth entirely, left in trust with a woman named Night.